Hi everybody, this is George. In this episode we're going to learn about access control lists in OS X Server. You can use access control lists in case standard POSIX permissions are not enough. An access control list is a list of access control entries, each specifying the permissions to be granted or denied to a group or user and how these permissions are propagated throughout a folder hierarchy. Access control lists provide an extended set of permissions for a file or folder to give you more granularity when assigning privileges than standard permissions would provide. For example, rather than giving a user full write permissions, you can restrict him or her to create only folders and not files. Only the Mac OS Extended Volume format provides local file system support for access control lists. In addition, only SMB and AFP protocols provide network file system support for access control lists in Windows and Apple networks respectively. Open the Server app and click the Storage pane. Choose any folder available for file sharing and click the Action pop-up menu to view and edit permissions. Apple's Access Control List model supports 13 permissions for controlling access to files and folders. Change permissions. User can change standard permissions. Change owner. User can change the files or folders ownership to himself or herself. Read attributes. User can view the files or folders attributes, for example, name, date and size. Read extended attributes. User can view the files or folders attributes added by third-party developers. List folder contents, read data. User can list folder contents and read files. Traverse folder, execute file. User can open subfolders and run a program. Read permissions. User can view the files or folder standard permissions using the getinfo or terminal commands. Write attributes. User can change the files or folder standard attributes. Write extended attributes. User can change the files or folders other attributes. Create files, write data. User can create files and change files. Create folder, append data. User can create subfolders and add data to files. Delete. User can delete files or folders. Delete subfolders and files. User can delete subfolders and files. In addition to these permissions, the Apple Access Control List model defines 4 types of inheritance that specify how these permissions are propagated. Apply to this folder. Apply administration, read and write permissions to this folder. Apply to child folders. Apply permissions to subfolders. Apply to child files. Apply permissions to the files in this folder. Apply to all descendants. Apply permissions to descendants. The Access Control List model focuses on access control at the folder level. Without this model, administration of access control would quickly become unmanageable, because you would need to create and manage access control lists on thousands or millions of files. So you can use the Server app to create and manage access control lists. The Get Info window in the Finder displays the logged-in user's effective permissions. But you can change access control lists there. In addition to using the Server app, you can also use the List and Change Mode command line tools. To grant access to a folder, click the Add button and type in a user's or group's name. Then choose between Full Control, Read and Write, Read, or Write in the Permissions field. Click the triangle to get even more granularity. If you want the permissions to be applied to all folders and files later, make sure that all of the inheritance checkboxes are selected. Click OK. To propagate permissions you have just set to child folders and files, click the Action pop-up menu and choose Propagate Permissions. Then click OK. You can find two types of access control entries in the Server app. Explicit access control entries, which are those you create in an access control list, and inherited access control entries, which are those you created for a parent folder that were inherited by a descendant file or folder. To make inherited access control entries explicit, click the Action pop-up menu and choose Make Inherited Entries Explicit. Then click OK. Now you can edit these access control entries. OS X propagates access control list permissions at two well-defined times. At file or folder creation time, when you create a file or folder, the kernel determines what permissions the file or folder inherits from its parent folder. When initiated by administrator tools, for example, when using the Propagate Permissions option in the Server app. OS X evaluates access control entries in the access control list to determine a user's access. If access control entries are present for the user in the access control list, the user is granted or denied access. If no access control entries are present for the user in the access control list, OS X evaluates the standard POSIX permissions defined for the file or folder to grant or deny access. That's all for now. Thanks and see you later.